All right, guys, welcome back. Excited to be here for another episode of LNO Fireside Chats for Tesseract. I'm with Chris Anderson today, who is the European Spark Cell Coordinator. Chris, I'm not even going to pretend that I know anything about what you do on a day-to-day. So I'm going to give you this moment to say hi to the Tesseract and innovation world that decided to tune in and listen to our chats. Pretty excited to sit with you today. I think we've met each other probably in this space a couple times without realizing it. But I'm excited to just sit down and hear your story and hear how you got into the innovation space, what that journey's been like for you as an aircraft maintainer, and what it looks like for you now on the day to day in your Air Force career.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've been following these fireside chats for quite a while now, and so I'm glad to finally be part of the show and be able to kind of share my experience a little bit.
Yeah, that's the main
Uh,
thing with these. And that honestly, this is the best part, right? Because when you talk to people in innovation space, like a lot of the journey, we don't have an Air Force track of this is innovation and it fits in this little box of how you get in there and how you impact, your work center or beyond, depending on what type of thing that you're doing. It's really an organic a thing that most people start with, and then they realize like, hey, I'm really passionate about these types of things, and it fits in this space. And I imagine that was the same for you. But before we get to that, let's just hear a little bit about who you are and your full career really in the Air Force, when you started and some of the places that you've been and the career field that you joined up to be.
yeah, so I'm Chris Anderson. I joined back in 2007 now. Well, it's always been 2007, but now I'm just thinking about how long ago that was. And I joined to be a crew chief. Now, that's not what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a pilot, and my recruiter got me really good. He said that if I wanted to be a pilot, but you didn't want to go to school, then I should become a crew chief because then I'll know all the things about the aircraft. So it'd be that much easier to transfer over. And I'll tell you what, that guy got me hook, line, and sinker.
That's a good pitch.
But it was absolutely fantastic. And but the thing was I was fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm a crew chief. I work on airplanes. I grew up loving airplanes. My dad loved airplanes. We used to go out and watch them take off and land at airports all the time. And now I get to do that and get paid for it. My first base was Tinker, Oklahoma, over in Oklahoma City, where I was with the 552 working on the E3 AWACS. And that it was a very interesting culture over there because it's a heavy aircraft in a ACC, so Air Combat Command environment that primarily has heavy or has fighter aircraft, and so you have this like weird clash between personalities uh, that us as maintainers we had to kind of get through. But it really taught us a lot about pride in our work and pride in what we do to make sure that we were doing safe maintenance all the time. Uh, but during that time, I, I got an opportunity to become a VCO and work under a good mentor of mine who really started making me question the things I've been told all throughout my career. Uh, hey, Chris, why are you doing it this way? Well, because that's the way I was taught. Cool. Did you look at the AFI? Did you look at this? Did you look at that? It's like, no, senior airman so-and-so told me to do that. So that's just the way I've always done it. And come find out when I started looking at AFIs and stuff, oh, things change. And so it was very eye-opening for me. Not gonna lie, I was there for 8 years, and it was a very difficult 8 years for me. Um, so thankfully, I was able to pull out of there. I was still able to somehow survive the Quality Force Reduction Board, and I was able to later on PCS and move to Okinawa, Japan, and be stationed at Kadena, working KC-135s. The culture of just the relationship between ops and maintenance is night and day when you look at how the 135 pilots treat maintenance and the AWACS pilots and ops crew treats maintenance. It is very much more collaborative, more working together, and it was just overall a better environment. It was very interesting because it was hard work.
Yeah.
Kadena we have for the number of aircraft that we have over there, we're constantly working. We're constantly having to do real missions that have major impact in the area. And but we were so close to the mission that we knew why we're doing things. And I think for my crew chief career, that probably had some of my fondest and biggest impact moments of being so close to the mission. Uh, around So I was there for about 4.5 years, and I started getting interested in CPI, so process improvement.
Yeah.
Just on a whim, I've always had this experience of not turning things down. And so I got an email about, hey, do you want to become a green belt and learn about this? And I was like, well, the current office I'm in needs a lot of work. I was the Dash 41 into IC. And I was like, this office could use a lot of work. And I think CPI might be able to help that from the way that this email sounds. So let's go do that. And found out that that's actually something I really enjoy doing. I love learning about processes, learning about how different people operate, empathizing with people. And just, it was really eye-opening to see how so many people from so many different career fields have to deal with work that as a maintainer working on the line, I have absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
We get really upset at LRS and how much, because all I see is I walk in and you're just working on the computer and say, hey man, I need these parts ordered. And you're like, cool, you gotta fill out these 5 forms. It's like, can't you? Like, we never understood like all the different things that you have to do on a daily basis. But in that role, I was able to learn to look at those things, look at how you operate, ask those questions and then see like, okay, cool, how can we better work together so that we can optimize like what we're doing and things like that. And so I really, really enjoyed the CPI aspect. And that was towards the end of my time at Kadena. So whenever I transferred over to Mildenhall, where I'm at now, as soon as I got there, it was right time, right place. Mildenhall had a lot of innovation, big innovation things going on. They had their CPI person that was at the squadron just moved up to the group, and never seen that, like a CPI person at a squadron or a group level. Like it just wasn't really aware of those things. Yeah, I got my green belt certification right at that time, and they're like, "Oh, you have green belt? Cool. You're running the squadron innovation program now. Cool, 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 cool.
Yeah. I'm totally good at this. I know what I'm doing.
Totally good with this. I've had one person handhold me and my partner through a project, and now I'm running it for the squadron. Cool, cool, cool. Very challenging to do because this was back in December of 2019, going into 20. And
World was about to change. Yeah.
world was about to change. Absolutely. And so now we have COVID starting to hit. I'm trying to figure out like how do I do CPI for a squadron? And all I have to go off of is the things that they teach you in the course. What is it to be a champion? What is it to be the practitioner? And what is it to be the lead for the thing? And now I'm having to teach my commander what those three things are, and my leadership team what those things are. And I have to speak confidently about it. I was not confident about it.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, to be honest, I failed. I failed hard. Um, to the point where I actually got fired from the CPI position because they wanted me to do things. And when you pick a POC, when you pick somebody to lead the project, the whole idea is that that lead in the team come up with the solutions. And they have to feel like they're championed and supported and backed by the champion. And so when it's me, little old me picking, hey man, Nate, I think that you'd be really great for this. I think that this is kind of what's going on. This is what the commander wants, and uh, you know, just from your personality, I think that you would do great. Are you in?
Right. Yeah.
Our first reaction is like, heck yeah, man, that's gonna be awesome. And then, all right, cool, man. So this is what you're gonna need to do now. And you're like, huh, whoa, wait.
Right.
Uh, Chris, I got these 10 things I need to do. And that's like way down here. So I'm
Yeah.
not gonna be able to do it. And I wasn't able to convince the commander or the leads that in order to be successful, we had to have that involvement all the way throughout. So I got that was one of the reasons why I got fired. Around the same time that I got to Milton Hall, we had just started the test phase for the in the ear bone conduction project. And this was really my first taste of innovation in the Air Force. Um, my one of my key mentors, Doc Pengill, he had done all the lead up of making sure that everything was safe to use this product. Got the company there to Milton Hall to do a review of everything and teach people how to put in the equipment. And it was uh, hearing protection that provided a better hearing protection than the standard headsets that we use. And it allowed us to use single hearing protection. And so I was like, man, I'm partially deaf in one ear. Like I'm supposed to wear a hearing aid, and I do. So like I really care about this project. And so I went up to Doc and asked him like, hey, can I help out with it? He's like, yeah, man, absolutely. And so I started like calling the company and reading different specs on this and learning how does this machine operate and like how can I be the leader within my squadron to help make this happen, because as of right now, like we really didn't have any early adopters other than uh, Doc and the really like the group leadership team. And so I try to help champion that, and it just turned into a ton of research. I had to like read AFRL case studies on what does the noise reduction rating stand for, and how do you calculate that, and what does that mean versus the NRS rating, and the three different weights, and how do you calculate those so that you can de-risk the situation. It was very intense for a crew chief who has um, limited exposure to those types of things, and it's not something that we're used to all the time. Um, and I was very fortunate where Doc and I worked on it quite a bit, and we got selected for the 2021 Spark Tank project, or Spark Tank finalists, and that was how I was able to kind of get my foot in the door with innovation. Um, but I learned a hard lesson, and that is, yes, you should always work your boss's priorities, but make sure that your boss's priorities is also your boss's priorities. Otherwise, you'll still get fired. it
That's a good lesson learned.
it was very eye opening. Um, and so between not being successful at doing CPIs and then working my group commander's priorities, and not my squadron commander's priorities at a squadron position.
Yeah.
And just like having fundamental disagreements about how do we execute. They said, you know what, Chris, we don't think that this is the right fit for you. So we want you to go back to work the line.
Mm.
And so I worked the flight line again for another 6 months. And I loved it. I'm very much the type of person who let's make lemons out of lemonade. Like, how can we make a rough situation and then turn it into my benefit? And the Air Force had kind of already started to open my eyes to the possible with CPI, learning how to see like the different things that are going on that just aren't right and like that shouldn't sit right with me. And so now, like, let me take this experience back to our airmen and, hey guys, like, why are we bypassing this checklist? Why are we not doing these steps? Well, Chris, because it doesn't make sense. It's like, cool. Well, there's a process for that. Let's go into ETIMs. Let's do a change request.
Yeah.
Like, why are we doing it this way where it's like killing our backs to lift up this equipment item? Well, because we don't have anything better. It's like, cool. Like, let's look at some commercial off the shelf ideas to see if we can like just purchase those and be able to use that. And I really enjoyed that 6 months with being back on the line because it allowed me to stay connected with what are the daily problems that we have. 6 months later, my mentor at the group got orders to go do bigger and better things. And because I'd worked so closely with the group, they're like, hey, we want Chris to come up and take his spot. And so I got fired from the squadron for CPI, and I got moved up to the group to do CPI.
You got fired up.
I did. And they very quickly, they're like, hey, do you want to run the WPM program for the wing? I was like, absolutely not. No,
What is
like,
that?
so the WPM is the wing process manager. So they oversee, traditionally, they oversee both the continuous process improvement and the innovation side. So how can they develop the future green belts of your base? And I was like, guys, I'm not ready for that. I need to refine it for the group and provide some value to the group before I go up and like talk like an expert to everybody else. So I held off for a year doing that. And I had about a month of being able to kind of grasp my head around things when an old friend of ours, Shannon Vigil, gave me a call. She's like, hey, Chris, you took over for Doc, right? It's like, yeah, I did. She's like, great. Hey, we are wanting to come to Mildenhall and do a TOC thing, a theory of constraints thing with the Gold Wrap. And like, we're wanting to start this now.
Right.
Cool. I'm not used to talking to my group commander, not used to talking to my chief yet. And I'm like very just walking on eggshells based off of my last year experience with dealing with leadership. And I'm like, all right, cool. I get to walk in their office and say, hey, half A4 wants to come down and do this massive like 6-month thing. And oh, by the way, my current leadership's leaving. And like, how do we push it off to where the new leadership comes in if we don't just like, oh, hey, cool, you guys are here. By the way, this is happening. Buckle up.
Yeah. Welcome to your new assignment.
Welcome to your new assignment. We're doing the 6-month long thing where we're completely looking at your organization to see how it should run better.
Right. And you haven't had
at the time.
Stuff. Yeah.
Right. And at the time, like, I didn't know how good of a thing that was. It turned out that it was hugely beneficial, but I didn't know who the new leader was, and I didn't know like what they were going to do. But yeah, thankfully, they came in and they were super supportive of everything, and we were able to do a theory constraints project on. We're already a very successful organization. Like we're coming off of winning the Department of Defense Maintenance Effectiveness Award. And so like we're highly successful in what we do and we're meeting all of our metrics. So then why should we utilize theory constraints within our organization? And what the team realized was that yes, we are very successful, but we're doing it on the backs of our airmen. So then how can we utilize theory constraints to be able to normalize and structure how we execute the mission so that we don't have so much thrash for our airmen, so then we can also build in time to deliberately develop them through another new program that was emerging out of Aviano at the time called Airmen for Life. And so we worked on, I worked on with them with that project, being the lead for that. And at the same time, I had another good friend, Georgia Riggs. He's like, hey, Chris, like, you should join this Slack channel, which was the Tesseract Slack channel and the Innovation Slack channel. And like, she was just like hugely beneficial, like pointing me into different innovation areas to take a look at. And I'm just like, heck yeah, man, like, let's do this, let's do that, let's do that. And I would spend my work day working on the theory constraints project, and I would spend my nighttime like learning about small business innovation research and like all these different AFWorks aspects and doing design thinking and just trying to better understand like what is it that we're doing. And I over time built up this resume that when my wing leadership was starting to look at building a Spark cell, they're like, hey, Chris, we want you to help out with this. I was like, all right, cool. I was thankful enough to have a good friend of mine, Buddy White, who was Manpower, and I think right now he's a recruiter. And he was like, hey, Chris, like, I'm going on to this assignment, but like, I want to help get this through the finish line. And so him and I worked on it quite a bit where he was building out the bones of like, what do we need for a budget? Like, what are the things that we need to purchase? And then I would kind of give the why and the explanation and provide the credentials for like why it's important to have a Spark cell. And I really didn't know much at the time about like what we could do as a Spark cell or like the huge benefits of it. The Liberty Works over at Lake and Heath, which is about 8 minutes away, they were just starting up, and I was very beneficial that at the time they had a representative for AFWorks over there called his name was Ike Hawley, and so I spent a lot of time over with him, like just kind of learning and absorbing. Like, hey, what is this AFWorks thing? Like, what are these people doing? Like, how can we help? How can we support? And then one of their leadership at the time found out that we were trying to start up a Spark cell. So they're like, hey, Chris, like, would it be beneficial if we came down and talked to your wing leadership? I was like, yeah, absolutely. And so they did, and they talked about all the different benefits, like what's going on and what other Spark cells have done in the past. And they're like, oh, by the way, Chris should probably run it because this is his resume. And the manager's like, oh, yeah, go ahead, like full set.
Right.
And so that was hugely like how I got into the innovation space and into the Spark cell. And I spent about a year with although the commander was supportive, he was very nervous about things and didn't want to kind of like shake the boat when it came to uh, going against his squadron and group commanders for things that he wasn't being viewed or rated on. Um, and so it was very easy for me to hire anybody that the commanders were like, yeah, man, go ahead, take him. Um, and so that's how I got my project manager, who was an A1C fresh out of tech school, but had like 8 to 10 years of experience in gaming prior to joining, being a project manager over there. And I was like, yeah, man, I want you. I was supposed to be the project manager, and like I was gonna like, get the credentials for it and everything else like that. But like, if you could do it, that's even better because I think we're gonna be more successful. And it was absolutely the right call. Uh, but that was the only person I was able to pick up at the time, and so we were in Spark Cell by ourselves. It was just him and I versus the world up until about August of last year when we got a new commander, and like you just see the shift in our space, in our base. And now the Spark Cell that we founded has 4 members and just a great team, huge amount of support, and it's continuing to get better every day. And so just really, really excited to see what they're going to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks. I mean, that's before we even got on, like I was talking to you about just different journeys through a person's career in the innovation space. And I mean, everybody's got a story anyway, but just how you're able to navigate that and those different highs and those different lows. It's such a great thing to just to hear because so many different people, just like you start in one specific type area, and then the longer you're in and the more exposure you get to different types of ideas and ways of thinking. And I made a note of it, but I'm so glad you had that good supervisor when you went to Kadena who kind of forced you to open your mind a little bit to ideas of not just maybe thinking, but asked you to think not in a traditional, well, someone told me, so I just did it. And I never thought to think of another way, just by probing you of, hey, why are you executing in this manner? What does your manual or instruction tell you you're supposed to be doing? And does it benefit you? And then just to hear from that, you evolved that into your own way of thinking after you gain some more experience and you're able to take that back to the line of, hey, you guys are doing this or doing that, or this is something you're complaining about. What have you looked at to alleviating your own problem?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate with the leadership teams throughout my career. I've definitely had some leadership teams that were not good, but the ones that were good were fantastic. And I am quite honestly, I'm where I am today, and I continue to be where I am today. The way I always say it's by the grace of my commanders in chief to allow me to do what I do right now. Um, because I'm not in a billeted position. I'm in a out of hide position, and they see the value in what I do to allow me to continue doing and being more than just a crew chief. And the unfortunate thing is that I heard that quite a bit throughout my career, and I know a lot of our other people do as well. Of, listen, we pay you to do X, so that's what you should be doing. And it's like, yeah, we go into a rabbit hole about that, but
I think,
yeah,
especially for your career field, that maintenance and more maintenance as a whole, because you guys are like, you're specialty positions, um, and that's your zone of an aircraft. That's your specialty. You're good at what you do, and then you'll move to the next aircraft or next airframe, weapon system, whatever have you that you're coded to. but that's your gig. You get there, you learn that, you become good at that for that piece, and you move to the next one, and you look take those lessons learned and pass them down. And so I think maybe stepping out for in some of those more traditional type career fields where that is the focus, it's hard to get out of that culture. So what was that journey like for you then? Because you brought it up. You're not in a funded traditional position. You are in an AFWorks position over the Spark cells. How did you make that transition from the group in the wing over to AFWorks?
Yeah, so when I got linked up with Ike Hawley, um, I went to my first crossflow, I think it was 2 years ago now, and that's where I was really introduced to AFWorks. And I was very fortunate to where I was able to get some mentorship from him on how to do things. Um, and there was opportunities to go to summits and go to a lot of different events that AFWorks was funding or that my wing leadership would fund because it wasn't them funding me and my team to go TDY was a very easy yes, more than being able to actually do innovations and support our base at the time. Thankfully, it's changed, but at the time, that's kind of what the atmosphere was. And so I was able to really open up my aperture and continue to go to these events. And I'm very much the type of person that when I'm in a meeting or I'm at an event, because of my ADHD and my need to respond, you always know I'm there. Like, when I'm not there, you know that too, because you don't have the loud guy in the back, like, yeah, you said this. um, and so like I was able to build up some type of reputation, and there's just so many different cool things going on between Tesseract and AFWorks, um, that I never said no to an opportunity, and I was able to build up a resume and an education credentials that Mike Oppenbacker, who was like the original Spark coordinator, approached me. He's like, "Hey, Chris, like, uh, I think now you're ready to take on a Spark coordinator role. So I want you to do an AFWorks fellowship, and like we want to see like we've seen you on the peripherals, and we know that you do great things, but now we want to work with you and validate and verify that you're going to do a good job, and like if we give you an autonomous role that you're actually going to do work." And so I really had to prove myself to the team with that in that aspect. Uh, and I did my fellowship and things went okay. Uh, my project was trying to better understand like where can we better identify where our innovators are throughout the Air Force. It's something that we're still doing. But they saw my drive and my passion, and I put in for the position because it came open. They were trying to get a new USAFE position because Kendall Lenovo, who was my predecessor, she was leaving to do greater, better things, and I got hired on. And in order to do it, we could, all of us coordinators, we have 5 of them in the Air Force right now. We call ourselves orphan childs because our AdCon is with our base. So like my AdCon actually my position number falls under the MXG. My supervisor is my director of staff for the wing. But then the people who tell me for my OpCon, it's AFWorks. So they tell me where I need to go and kind of what I need to do. And so it's been a very unique and interesting experience. I asked them, like, what do you guys want me to do in my role as a Spark coordinator? And they're like, well, Chris, like, what does your Spark sales need in your region? And how can you provide value to them to do things? Like, figure it out. Like, cool. All right. That's very broad. Um, and so this year, I've not been able to travel very much to go visit all the Spark cells, because I very much, as much as I love the capabilities that virtual provides us, it it's very different to be able to establish a relationship with people by going out, seeing them, in like how do you interact with people? Like where can we provide value? And that's a big thing that AppWorks wants to do. We A lot of people look at AppWorks and the Spark team as kind of being a checkbook. And hey, can you pay for this training? Can you pay for that? Can you do that? But like, can you pay for our TDYs? But there's so much more that we do, and so much more value that we do, not just as AppWorks Spark, but as AppWorks as a whole, to try to help out our airmen and our leaders. Um, and so we really want to just provide that value and show that value to the Spark cells so that we can better help them. That help answer?
Yeah, 1,000%. So now that you've been in that seat for a little bit and you're over these cells, what are the type of things that you've been prioritizing, not only to assist the cells that you're over, but what type of projects have you started to see gain traction or move forward because of some of those prioritizations?
Um, so there's a lot of really I have 9 bases under my or 9 Spark cells under my purview that I really help. Out of a As of right now, we have about 113 registered. So like I have a very small piece of the pot compared to some of my other team members. Um, and as of recently, like our Lake and Eat team are creating a AI for better uh, wire maintenance repair for aircraft. That's or wire automated test for testing, something along those lines. I don't know. It's really cool. It's one of those things that we're still like I'm trying to better understand. Like, what is it that you do? All right,
Sure.
cool. I think I know who to connect you with. And I could definitely see the value because as of right now, we pay contractors, $50,000, $75,000, 3 weeks in order to be able to get something repaired. And they built an AI tool that can get it to 90%. They think it's about 80 to 90% right now, successful, within 30 minutes. And so now it's just writing the code to get to that extra 10%, which saves a lot of time. So we're seeing that. I had an opportunity to go to Bravo Hackathon over in Hawaii back in February, and I saw a tool chain called Stitches be utilized. And let me start off by saying I'm not a coder. Like I, very basics of like Python and things like that. But I'm not a coder, and so if people want to play, ask deep questions. I'm like, hey man, I got nothing. Like, talk to this person. Uh, but Stitches was a very interesting project. That was developed 7 or 8 years ago by DARPA as a integration tool. We have When we take a look at the Air Force and we take a look at like one of the primary problems that I see whenever we talk to airmen, it's in order to do my job, I have to look at 5 different systems in order to be able to verify whether or not this pilot can do his job, or I can order these parts. Why don't these systems talk to each other when like this field and this field are the same thing? But yet sometimes they're different. So I've spent a lot of time pulling reports and just looking at different sheets and things like that. Um, and so what Stitches does is if they're on the same network, like they're able to build a basically auto-generate an API that will update those two systems. And so you don't have to sit there and go through the two systems anymore. You can update one and then it will update the other. And you can do this with as many systems as you want rapidly. They say that if you have the right people in the room, you can do it in about 3 weeks, which compared to whenever we asked our industry partners to be able to build this integration between two different softwares, you're typically looking at millions of dollars and years. You know, years maybe not, but like 9 months to a year to year and a half in order to be able to build that integration. Um, and so that's one of the big projects that I have a fantastic crew chief right now who is a really good at computers. And really, he knows like 20 different languages. And so one of his project is like trying to verify, can we do this at the tactical, at the base level? Can our airmen identify this? And then can we build a pathway for them to get the right people in the room and spend 3 weeks to a month of investment to build the solution and then field it? And the fact of the matter is I don't know if we can,
Sure.
but AFWERX has given me the leeway and leverage to be able to figure it out. Over at Alcaberry, another really cool project is I have an airman who he's air traffic control, and he had to take the ready airman training, and in there was a CBT on integrated base defense. He's like, man, this CBT is great. I'm sure people like really grasping like what it is that we do and how do we do it. Awesome. And he's like, I think we could do this better. Like, what can I create to create follow-on training for this? So he created a game. He created a tabletop game that he can have airmen come in and play to now, cool, you've spent time learning what concealed first covered means and things like that. Well, now let's employ this here in this diorama and let's see what happens when red team comes to attack blue team. And I love that because it reminds me so much of Kingfish Ace and what we're trying to do with teaching our airmen Ace doctrine and gamification mindset. So those are just some of the projects that I see that have very different levels of value, but like when it comes to like providing a holistic picture of quality of training and quality of action. I really just love the different things that they're doing and that our people are doing.
Yeah, those are two really awesome ideas. I love when we get good success stories, especially from, someone from a lower level at that moment of, hey, this isn't great, but I'm going to make this better and taking on something like that. Chris, it's been awesome chatting with you. But before we go, I do have one final follow-up question for you. Now knowing all the lessons learned, all the things that you've encountered through this journey, you get to go back and talk to yourself before you started. What is one tool or mindset that you will pass to yourself to make your journey just a little bit easier?
Oh man, that's a hard one. Easier. That's a hard one.
And maybe not easier, but something you learned, even a little thing that maybe you wish you would have known before you started that you just had that you had to take a lump for.
I think the biggest thing is as you go and you see all the awesome things that are going on that you're about to invest a massive amount of time on, think about what is the problem you're trying to solve? And like, what is the core problem that you're trying to solve? And listen to the people. Like, listen to the airmen that you're working with, and not just listen, but listen to understand. Um, because as we go through and we try to make improvements for people, sometimes we forget about like who is the solution for, who's it could be used for. If you don't take the time to truly ingest like what they're saying, um, then you'll learn that the solution that you just spent hundreds of hours on doesn't actually get used, and that could be very frustrating. And that was a hard lesson I had to learn.
No, that's great advice. No, that's a good one. But again, hey, thanks for taking in your time out of your busy schedule to sit down with us. It was fun hearing your journey.
Hey, I really appreciate you guys having me on this week, and I look forward to continue working with the Tesseract team in the future.
Any references to trademarked, copyrighted, or protected products or services, such as books, movies, or businesses, are used here for the limited purpose of education and professional development of Air Force airmen. If you have any questions, please contact us at www.tesseract.af.mil.